workshop. I'll just wait for a minute till she comes back into the chamber. Morena koutou again, councillors, and welcome to the Accessibility Policy Workshop. Councillor Maxwell, could you open our workshop with a karakia, please?
He ino I tātou let us pray. Tūtawa mai I runga, tūtawa mai I raro, tūtawa mai I roto, tūtawa mai I waho. Kia tau ai, te mauri tū, te mauri ora, ki te katoa, haumi e, hui e, tai ki e.
Tēnā koe, Councillor Maxwell, and welcome to JP and Kellyanne. So Kellyanne works in our Thriving Communities team, and I think you're going to lead the presentation for us today. So I think councillors, Kellyanne would like to just present a few slides, and then there'll be a bit of a break, and then we'll take questions at that point. So she will let you know when we've reached an appropriate point, and we'll take questions then. So welcome, Kellyanne.
Thank you for that. Kia ora. I'm assuming I'm in control with this. Wonderful. Oh well, tēnā tātou katoa. Thank you very much for having us both here this afternoon. I know that we have a large and growing kind of population of disabled community who have been involved in this process to date, who are really keen to see, to hear about how this goes today. So if you're watching, kia ora. Accessibility. So first of all, a few little questions that I imagine most of you, hopefully all of you, have a yes response to. Are you or have you ever been a young child? Have you ever been responsible for a baby, a small child in a public environment? Have you ever twisted an ankle that has impeded your mobility, sorry? Have you ever been baffled in a non-English speaking country or environment? If the answer is yes to any of those things, then you can appreciate the merits of planning for and taking deliberate actions to improve the accessibility of our city for all. This is sometimes also referred to as universal design. Just a bit of an overview of what we'll cover off. So we'll do a bit of background, spend a bit of time building up the background, giving you an overview of the process to date and where we plan for it to go from here. And then we'll have a pause and we'll have a bit of a discussion about what we've just spoken about, and then carry on from there and just give you some really high-level examples of current state, what we're hearing so far around our current state with regards to accessibility, and then we'll present to you some of the high-level insights from the focus groups and that qualitative research that we've done within the community. So we'll talk to that, and then pause again for a discussion. And then the last bit of the workshop is around testing some of the implications of what this all might mean in terms of policy and what that looks like in the long term. Okay, to play. So just a bit of that background. Obviously, the most recent stats in our city around disability come from the 2013 Disability Survey. So they talk about, back in 2013, they were saying that we were looking at 17,000 disabled people as part of our population. Our researcher has made some adjustments to that based on population growth, and so we're estimating that to be closer to 20,000 at the moment. So that's, and they're sort of saying that's roughly 25% or 1 in 4 of our population live with a disability. Those are some of the makeup of some of the different types of disabilities in the community there. We also know that one thing that we don't have accurate data around, but we know impacts the number of your population stats around disability, is that we generally have a higher prevalence of disability amongst Māori population and a higher prevalence of disability amongst aged population. So those are two parts of our population that are growing. So we can see that this is going to become an even bigger issue for our city. The other thing that we don't account for is those of us with short-term impairments. So if we've got an injury or we've had to have a surgical procedure or whatever, there are times in our lives where we might have limited capacity. These stats don't account for those people, for those of us during those times, and or our visitor economy who are here for a short term as well. So those all add to those numbers. The lack of specific requirements to address the needs of an expanding disability community should be of concern to Council. However, despite competing demands, I just really want to say there's some really wonderful stuff happening in Council at the moment, despite having a policy. And the fact that we've got quite severe financial constraints and things like that, there's still people doing their best to kind of make stuff happen, which is really wonderful. Staff and leadership have implemented a range of significant new projects and improvements. We currently have a policy of build back better. So when we're renewing parts of roads and streets and walkways and things like that, we're building them back to a higher standard of accessibility than it would have been before. So that's something that's already happening. And we'll accommodate what is referred to as universal design standards, and we'll talk a little bit about that.
Just picking up a couple of councillors writing down points, we're going to make sure that, assuming that you've all got this now into Stella as a presentation or at the end of this meeting, just so you can refer back to it as well.
So some of these key terms, we just wanted to give you a bit of a breakdown of these key terms. It's important so that we're using the right language when we're referring to, because to not use the right language could potentially cause offence to the community. So accessibility and barrier-free, these terms are often used interchangeably, but they generally refer to the removal of barriers, where they could be attitudinal or environmental, and they increase the opportunity for disabled people to participate fully in the community. This comes from the social model of disability, which it really seats the problem around how it seats the problem around design, and accessibility being about how the world around people is designed to inhibit access, if that makes sense. Disability is the loss or limitation of opportunities to take part in society on an equal level with others due to social and environmental barriers. So what people are saying is, I have impairments, I'm not disabled. I'm not a disabled person, I have impairments, it's the environment that disables me. So that's kind of where that, what we're adopting when we're using that term. An impairment is an injury, illness or congenital conditions that cause or is likely to cause a loss or difference in physiological or psychological function. Impairments can be both physically apparent and hidden. And then non-disabling is talking about removing barriers that limit accessibility. Tangata whaikaha, so this is a Māori term, it's fairly widely adopted to refer to the disabled community. And the distinction there is that it emphasises gaining strength and ability, not on a deficit. And universal design, this is talking about good design in the physical environment that works for everyone. Emphasis is on making everything accessible to, understood by and used to greatest extent possible by everybody, without adaptation or requiring little adaptation. Cool. So, access for all. Why do we need a policy for this? RLC currently has no formal position on what we want to see, let alone what good looks like, and provides no guidance to staff on how to achieve good. The RRC accessibility policy will provide guidance to council functions and staff around how we create a Rotorua for those of us who feel locked out from participating in society because the barriers we experience to going out the door make the task at times insurmountable. We want all of our community to be seen, heard and participating and enjoying all the same freedoms as everyone else. This is critical to fulfilling our full potential in economic development as a city. Design with people with impairments at the centre, ensure a higher standard of access. These will help us realise our vision of a better Rotorua for all. We currently have a significant percentage of our population for whom the most basic needs are not served in our district, and as a result have limitations to the services they can access, the parts of our local culture, society and environment they can engage with, and the information they have at their hands.
Probably just adding 2 seconds to that is just, we've had the push in the past and it becomes sort of a focus areas, but really it's all about this universal accessibility as age-friendly or child-friendly policies. And actually we're talking about actually being more holistic in that space.
So this is the process to date. We have spent the best part of the last 6 months in this discovery phase, and we're now sitting in the July. You can see we are here. We're in July where we're focused on defining the problem. So up until now, we've been having this taking this high-level understanding approach of the problem, exploring the literature, standards of best practice, defining some of those key terms, and planning out the policy process, and planning out how we want to engage with the community on the matter. This last little while, the phase that we're in now, the defining phase, is where we've been engaging and listening to members of the disabled community. We've established a steering group of internal staff members. We have had 3 focus groups with people with lived experience. So 1 focus group with people from the disability sector, so people who work with people with disabilities, and 2 focus groups with people with lived experience. We have also, we're conducting a survey, an online survey, and that's still out now, and we'll look at some of the early data from that survey. We have also looked at the LTP submissions that spoke to accessibility, so we've got an idea around what feedback council's already had in this topic. We've developed some high-level insights from understandings gathered from the previous phase, and we're prototyping some things, the scope, some principles for what good looks like, and we're going to test some of those ideas with you today. The next step from here, we will be developing the policy, and we'll bring it back to you in October, hopefully for adoption. And then that should trigger another stream of work, which is around developing so now what's the work that happens from here? And we think that's, there's both some short, medium and long-term kind of work planning that needs to happen there. How we've come to understand the problem. So we've done both some desktop research, and we're currently in the phase of collecting quantitative research, and we've just completed some qualitative research. We've had a range of one-to-one discussions just with people, and that's been around shaping the process to engage. We had 31 different participants in our focus group sessions, and currently we've got the survey out, and we've had 48 respondents to that. And that survey is targeting people who actually lived with disability and or their family and friends. So it's likely that will be quite a small respondent number anyway. From the focus group discussions, we've had 500 plus data points. So this is individual comments that participants have made. We've collated them all. Most of them are up in the downstairs pudding room. They're up on the wall if anyone wants to have a look. I was going to put them up out here, as people were interested. Some of the early data from our survey. One of the questions we asked in the survey is, to what extent is Rotorua accessible at the moment? we have an average rating of about 4.7 out of 10. So pretty mediocre. This one talks about, this is our Net Promoter Score that Fiona has pulled together. This isn't from our survey, but what it's saying is that we have a negative 80 Net Promoter Score for Rotorua is accessible. So just kind of giving us an indicator of how our community and or our visitors are seeing Rotorua in this light. So the economic case. At the moment, people in work is a really big part of the economic. There are people in the disabled community who are currently unable to work, not because they're not capable of working, but because the barriers that they face to get to work are insurmountable. They're not. It makes it not possible. Increased spending powers. So the more people in our economy who are out spending, and the more people who are working, obviously that increases economic turnover. There is also opportunity to grow our role in the knowledge economy. So there's some specialist knowledge and specialist. We can become experts in this. We can build our expertise around this, and there's opportunity to attract a whole new market in our visitor economy. So, in speaking with Rotorua NZ, they talk about statistics regarding accessible visitor market. They have had they've done some work with some consultants around this and talk about some figures around families with disabled person tend towards local travel for their holidays. So there's a real potential for building on a market on this market. Disabled visitors visit with their families, friends and support networks. So you're talking about a 1+2=4 visitor group. We plan in advance and look for accessible amenities in our planning and decision making. This is what they've told us. So we'll know in advance when they're coming, and they will look for activities that the whole family can do that are inclusive of their disabled whānau member. So part of a really good reason why we might be thinking about this seriously. The social case is that our people are seen because they can participate. They're making meaningful contributions. Accessibility for all improves participation potential for everyone, and we can become known for being an inclusive city with barriers to access removed.
Right, we'll take some questions at this point. So thank you, Kellyanne. So I think, Your Worship, you had a question?
Thank you very much. Just regarding the negative net, and thank you very much for the work that's already been done to date on this. It's really amazing to see, and I do appreciate the working group internally already meeting. Thank you. Just in regards to this, I'm just not sure whether this is a perception issue or a reality issue, because we have put quite a lot of investment into the city, including previously, like at the Rotorua Aquatic Centre and the specific swing that was there for children or people with wheelchairs. I know that, there has been consideration of people in any sort of wheels in a lot of the infrastructure, including in our parks and reserves. And so just double checking, is that correct? Is this just what people, are we not sharing those stories more?
Yes and yes. I do believe that the Net Promoter Score is a perception score, so it's what are people's perceptions. Some of the kōrero that we've heard from our focus group sessions is that sometimes our community don't actually know what facilities are available. So many people don't know that some of our facilities exist. They don't, so we actually don't have really good communication and information available to map out those things. So there's partly a piece around communication. The other thing is that all those wonderful things that we are doing currently and that we have done and that we have achieved, the community are really celebrating those things and acknowledge those things. They're also saying we've got a lot more to do. Yeah, so.
I'd also pick up on it's where we do have some information, so it's really positive to see the library, and apologies for anyone trying to watch online. It's really hard to see the text, but out there on the high end would be the library. I'd certainly hoping that if we had a net promoter score that had been done for Sir Howard, it would be high. For the aquatic centre, it would be high, because all the facilities we've just finished have seen a significant uplift in their kind of standards and accessibility. So again, it's what information we have, and it's kind of nice to know that we have got some that have made some quite significant changes recently.
And I'd have to check with you actually that like when this net promoter score data has been collected, it could be that it's slightly out of date as well.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Kellyanne and JP. Just focusing on the toilet issue, which is probably the thing that's at the top of most minds when they have challenges. My understanding is that the library is the only full-service public facility, that being a hoist, the whole shooting box. Is that true?
No, well, not now. I think the aquatic centre has one, and I know that there is disabled facility at the lake, but I couldn't tell you yet whether that has a hoist in it or not.
Just I had some feedback from somebody who went to Lakeside who said, oh, you know, we have to go all the way back to the library, which is a bit of a challenge when you have, you know. And what about the new ones? I know we're having Hamurana has been upgraded, and also Puketawhero/Tenai. Do they have disabled facilities in there?
So one of the things, at the moment, the policy hasn't reviewed and audited what the current state of facilities are. That will be something that will kick out into an action plan. So to look at, okay, what we've done is looked at what the standards are, what the local standards are, and then looked at and then heard from community what they think needs to be thought about, needs to be considered in developing the policy. Once the policy's set, then we start looking at, okay, so what have we got? What are the things that we've got? So I couldn't tell you exactly what facilities are where, although I have heard about them through some of the discussions, and talking with staff, they're telling us some of the activity that's going on. But we would have to do a proper audit of all our facilities.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The screen that you had up there that showed the 4.7 measure, I think it was the one before the net promoter, that one. Have we done historical data over a period of time to see how we're trending? And is it able to be benchmarked against other cities, or is this just an internal measure that we've done?
I think this is a question that we have pulled. I'll have to double check with our researcher, but I do believe that this is a question that's been pulled from other studies. We might be able to benchmark it against others. This is the first time we have asked here, so we don't have any historical figures.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for your work. My question sort of follows on from that. It's about the online survey, and you've obviously, well, I'm assuming you've a target specifically to disabled.
Age, and the team have been doing flyer drops and putting posters up around the town, and so it's had a bit of a slow uptake to begin with, but we hope to see that. The other thing I think we need to remember is that limitations to access also mean that we might not see the respondents that we that we might want to, although there have been lots of measures put in place to make the survey more accessible to a larger range of people with disabilities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Maybe, Kellyanne, do you want to carry on with the presentation? And then I know you've got another pause point there. Maybe if you could just bring your microphone a little bit closer and speak loud and clear as well too, please. That would be
You can
good
break
for
into
those
song
listening.
too if you like. Just jokes. So our current state, what we've heard is going well. So this is based on what our respondents told us. Access to the natural, they love the fact that Rotorua, we have this wonderful access to the natural environment, forests, lakes and coast, and the parks team have done a lot of wonderful work there to make it even more accessible for people with accessibility problems. So children with disabilities are well received and acknowledged in public. Using the bus and the transit app, people are saying that they really love these things. We have reasonably flat terrain, which makes getting around easier. And parking time allocation is good for disabled parks, so that was really good to hear. And collaboration for footpath on Long Mile Road, that particular project was outstanding. So, pardon me. We also heard that when we have good family connections and social networks, that allows people to go more places. The sunflower lanyard, so that works really well when people understand what it is and they know what it's about and it's being... Does everybody know about the sunflower lanyard? So people with disabilities can register and register to acquire a lanyard which has sunflowers on it, and it's basically a signal to operators, to businesses, that that person has a hidden disability probably, and just to be mindful of that in your service and care with them. We're a smaller city, and we have a good sense of community, and it's easy to know someone pretty much everywhere you go. People really like that, and they really liked the aquatic centre developments. They think that's going to be life-changing for many people, and the boardwalks around the lakes and in the forests. So some wonderful stuff already. On the work-ons, people talked about parking and transport. So these are things, there's parking and transport, there's like a huge, kind of list of things there. Size, shape, location for accessibility parks, number of parks, policing parks, bus access, knowledge of stops, rural access to transport, those kinds of things. Disabled bathrooms, people are saying, we take 2 weeks to plan an outing and plan what we do based on availability of suitable toilets. So when there aren't any or they don't know where they are, it will mean that they can't go somewhere. Adequacy of disabled toilets, so things like hoists, room for wheelchairs and support people, change tables, showers, doors, all those things. And just accessing information about where those are. Paths, curb cuts, crossings, those things, there's a lot to be worked on. And events and venues, things like information available at booking, making it easy, booking to sit with whānau. So if you have a disability, you'll have to disclose that you have a disability if you need special designed access. Often people will say they can only go with them and a caregiver, but actually they want to go with a group of people, so they have to be separated. So little details like that. Sometimes at events where they're situated as unsafe, it'll be on a slope or something because we haven't thought about that. And also people with hidden disabilities, they feel judged at times and untrusted. So the focus group data, we've analysed it all, and that's 500 kind of individual comments, and we've boiled it down to 3 main insights that we think, and within each there's a whole lot of themes that sit within this insight. But the first insight is around council being a local leader and role models, leading by example and influencing others, particularly in the commercial and business sector, providing a standard for what good looks like, what we strive towards, and tracking and measuring our progress, providing exemplars, educating and encouraging those using our facilities and services to plan and design their events accordingly. So a lot of the things that people brought up, they weren't necessarily things that council controlled. So our events, most of the events that people talked about aren't council events, but they're in our venues. So what levers might we be able to pull to encourage better consideration in events? Providing a library of knowledge and information, institutionalised capabilities. People talked about sometimes knowledge sits with a person. It's not necessarily structured as part of the organisation. When somebody leaves, that knowledge will go with them, and then the community has to start from scratch again with some, if they pick it up at all. And that knowledge is democratised, open tracks, subject to scrutiny. Insight 2. This is about deliberate, thoughtful design that improves access. We're already doing some good stuff in this space. It's really just about ramping it up. We heard that everything takes longer and takes a lot more planning and steps to participate. Many of the barriers that our disabled community experience can be avoided with a bit of extra effort, better design and/or planning. So we heard that they would like to see universal access standards to paths, curb cuts, crossings, universal access standards to parking and public transport, increasing the number of quality and the number and quality of disabled toilets, public event standards, all those things. So one of the quotes in that little blue speech bubble, you probably can't read it, it says, things can sometimes tick the compliance box, but not the experience box. Insight 3 is around independence, dignity and joyful lives. So we heard that everything takes longer. Oh, sorry, no, it's the same notes. Basically, they're asking for full barrier-free participation, careful planning and consideration around wayfinding, information and communication, improved and increased number of accessible facilities, events and investment. The quote there is, "I don't go to certain places because of lack of suitable toilet facilities. Success is when no one has any anxiety about going to an event."
Right, we'll take some questions now on those last few slides. So, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just with regards to our engagement and consultation with interest groups through the community, the likes of Age Concern, Parkside, Grey Power, they would have contributed to this corridor?
They were invited.
Yep.
I do have the list of the groups that did participate, but we definitely engaged with them. Even if they weren't in our focus group, we engaged with them around it anyway. Yep.
So looking forward, we talked about the opportunity with the market as a visitor market for people who have disabilities. If they know that Rotorua, because of our natural nice flat environment, easily accessible, things like the redwoods, etc. But what about our actual accommodation, hospitality and attractions? Have we found out where their thinking lies? Are they actually looking at improving their facilities as well? Because everybody has to be on the same page, otherwise it won't work.
Yeah, and I think that's the bit, we know that we can't, we're not in control of the businesses, and there are some, I think, that already operate to a higher standard around accessibility. But I think it was the first insight, talks about people acknowledge the fact that council isn't responsible for local businesses, but we can provide guidance and leadership and role model, and role model what good looks like, and hopefully that has a flow-on effect.
There's also an opportunity for us to coordinate some of the information because I think as we talk about that holistic view of us being a destination or a place, and as we improve when we do renovations and redo a curb and channel or redo a footpath, similarly when we see investments into hotels and accommodation and business, clearly the standards have changed over time, so they often have to reach a higher standard on disabled access and quality of toilets and things like that. So things are incrementally shifting, but often it's a case of trying to capture that information. Someone has a rounded view of actually where could I go, what could I use, and is the destination getting better?
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Kerry-Ann. I see in many of the slides you brought up, events comes up, which I think is a good thing. That's what can get our people out there to go and enjoy events. Are the people who are running these events aware that they must let their people know, or is it a requirement?
At the moment, we don't have, from my understanding, we don't have requirements around accessibility for people who are using our venues and facilities for their events. So that's something that the policy could trigger a piece of work around. Is there something that we can build into our, the way that the expectations we have of people who are using our facilities and so on and so forth. So that's a piece of work that potentially could be triggered from this.
There's another part which links to your overall priority around safety. There is a really close link here for people with disabilities to make sure they feel safe in different environments and different places, as well as being served by the facilities. Councillor O'Brien may be aware we had the audit done of the accessibility across the CBD inner city, and that highlights a whole bunch of challenges in other policies, like our street trading policy, our signage policy. It's often difficult enough as an unimpaired person to navigate your way through our streets and our signs and our street furniture, let alone someone who may have some challenges. So again, it's how we take this information and use it in a whole range of other policies as well.
At the moment, events we run down at the event centre, or whether it's even down the lakefront, we always try and set areas. It's sort of in the planning, where can we put these areas? But I realise now it's not an obligation, but it's something we should encourage.
Yeah, totally. And I think too, what we heard from our participants in the focus groups was even sometimes those things are thought of and there are spaces available, but there will be still some kind of barrier to either accessing that space or for it to be actually fit for purpose. So even when we're doing the right thing, we've still got room for improvement around that stuff. And I think really that's our role, is kind of showing what good looks like.
Councillor Wang, followed by Councillor Waru.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Kellyanne, for that as well. I know that Councillor Patterson's already mentioned some of the organisations like Parkside, Age Concern, etc. Throughout this whole presentation, the one that I'm thinking of, and I'm sure you've already linked in with them, would be St Chad's. I think they have, having attended a few of their AGMs and stuff, I think there's a really clear link, and they really want to be involved, their members as well, of the disability community, and wanting to be, I guess, gain that independence and be able to, access, as Councillor Maxwell's mentioned as well, the events and stuff. And I'm wondering where your linkage with them is on this, and I guess with that accessibility group as well.
Thank you. Yes, St Chad's have been a wonderful support and community resource for this piece of work. We conducted our 2 focus groups with the community at St Chad's, just because we knew that it was a place that was fully accessible for those people, and for most of our people, most of the people that were involved, they were familiar with that place. So they have been a wonderful source of support and guidance in this developing this process. Thank you.
Councillor Wari?
Kia ora, te tiamana. Tēnā kōrua. Just a quick question. You know, it's good we're talking about this, and we've been talking about it for a while. So it's good to see that in writing form and hopefully moving forward quicker. Just a quick question, because I've done a bit of a kōrero with a lot of businesses and such around the place, and most of the feedback I get back around accessibility, kōrero and all that, is really just needing some kind of guidance around what they should do. Is there anything, and I think I heard it, but is that the case that you're saying? And secondly, with this, is there a plan to somehow go out and get everybody on board? I know you sort of already touched on it a little bit, but is there an actual plan, or is it just a feeling we want to follow on from?
Councillor, I think that depends on where we go with the policy. So clearly you can imagine when we start saying, cool, we've done a policy with you, we've got our guidance. Part of that, when we get to the action planning stage of short, medium and long term, is what are those key actions. And one of those is critically going to be information to for development, but equally gathering information that is accessible for people to be able to sort of join up the pieces. So that will be in that sort of action planning stage once we've got through this first gate, but you can start identifying, I think probably from the discussion we've had, about some of the methods we could be delivering on a policy.
So if we're looking at this change process, what you're talking about is that bit after the red line. So what we're trying to get from you today is a bit of a steer on what happens in this policy. Will steer what happens after that red line, and what that means in terms of our short, medium, and long-term planning. Yeah, if you go by Insight 1 in particular, our community do kind of want to see us providing leadership around it. Yeah. What that looks like. There are different ways that could be provided.
Okay, a couple. No, the purpose of my questioning was just, you know, when we do this, I'll say, then we need to make sure it's actually something that's going to have a bit of kaha. Because too often, you know, easy to whip a policy together and then go, hey, we have it. Then it's the how do we implement it? Yeah. So
this is the easy part. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Kia ora.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, Kelly and JP. If I could just make the comment, Madam Chair, with and I understand my colleagues' frustration and eagerness to get this going, but can I just remind what this idea is for us, one, to decide whether we want to have a policy or not. Two, if we decide to down the track, that is going to be a very top flowing down work stream orientated process. This isn't a wish list for us to suddenly promise that every footpath with a crack in that is going to be fixed, that every toilet suddenly is going to have a hoist, and that every facility of council, no matter how old, is suddenly going to be transfixed into a more accessible, friendly facility. So I think we just need to tie-ho at the top end. This is the focus about what the general moving forward will look like. I appreciate we're all frustration. We'd all love to have a pot of money to fix these things, but we just need to focus on what it actually is that the staff are bringing forward. So I just bring that forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. I think it's probably timely because I know the next slide is coming up, and I think that you're right. We still need to have a little bit more time to recognise what we need to do, what budget constraints we're working in, and how we actually facilitate that, because we still have annual plan and long-term plan discussions to come. So maybe, Kellyanne, if you just want to finish off on this last slide, and then we can take some comments from the staff, but it may also be an opportunity for councillors just to reflect on what we've discussed today before we actually make any firm recommendations back to you, because it's the first time that most of the councillors have seen this presentation.
Kia ora. And one of the main goals of today was just to give you a sense of the size and scale, and start to think about, well, what can we tackle? How can we, how do we start to progress forward in this? So kia ora, hopefully we've achieved that. What JP and I have done is kind of pull together 3 different options around how the policy, I suppose what we want to do is make sure that in developing the policy, it's actually in line with whatever will happen after the policy. So will give us a bit of a steer and a bit of a scope, really. Yeah. So option 1 is that the policy will provide some guidance and will take a bit more of a distributed capability model. So there will be people within the organisation who will pick up some responsibility around this. We'll manage within our existing budgets, and we will review and prepare for the next long-term plan. So that's option 1. Option 2 is that all of option 1, but there might be a little bit of extra resourcing to have some targeted SME subject matter expertise recruited, which is to help to build that kind of capability and provide some of that leadership and look at the priority areas to start kind of ramping up around. And then option 3 is, as for option 1, having some dedicated disability SME roles, and additional resourcing as agreed. So, yeah.
If I could flesh that out, and something like in that spectrum, isn't it? So the first one is to go, we may invest in clarity around the policy. We know that it influences a group of other policies, so there's this internal coordination within existing budgets for us to lift the bar. And also just to recognise that also goes to things like communications. So what we have on our website for information, so you can see a bit more of a holistic approach being taken within our existing budgets and our additional expertise. So that the only additions might be additional training, the facilitation of getting our staff up to speed. It's nice to have some staff in the background who are also listening to this, because it doesn't affect other parts of the organisation a lot. So that's kind of the view of, we'd take those first steps and work on the projects where there is existing LTP budgets or existing renewals that are happening. So that's that kind of the lower end of the spectrum, and we can learn and reflect back before the next LTP about if anything has to change. So it's the kind of the evolutionary approach we're taking. The second one is probably finding someone to be a physical champion of accessibility within the organisation. So actually within an existing role, we might consider recruiting. So there might be an existing role. We actually say, we'd like to try and recruit someone with some additional expertise. So it isn't trying to add an extra person, it's using existing headcount and roles, particularly in the specialist areas. And what we've previously had is some of that expertise existed within our building team. So we had someone who had a specific amount of expertise around accessibility who by the nature of their experience and their training, actually had specific knowledge that they used within the building team. We've now lost that person. So again, we've got that gap of real expertise that we could add into a recruitment. And then as Kellyanne mentioned, option 3 is to go, actually we go bigger and we actually try to consider at an operational level recruiting additional capability or look at individual projects at an annual plan basis. So that's the more expensive option, and as Councillor O'Brien rightly challenged, that puts pressure on stuff you've already put pressure on in the LTP process. So we would probably be recommending to you that we have an option really around 1 or 2 to really put the focus on the organisation. But again, even being able to recruit expertise in that level 2 is a challenge for us. So if we take a steer from you today about your ambitions over the next 2 or 3 years, that will help us shape the policy, and then that will subsequently help us shape a realistic action plan out the back of that.
Thank you, JP. So maybe if we just get some preliminary comments from people, because I know it's the first time people have heard this information and probably haven't really had the opportunity to necessarily consider all the information in detail to be able to give exact guidance as to the options. So maybe we've heard from Councillor O'Brien, so if we start there again and then we'll go around the room if that's okay. And Your Worship, perhaps do you want to make an opening comment then?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for your presentation. We have just gone through quite a vigorous long-term plan in which we were having to be quite strict on what we pause or delay due to affordability issues and our desire for efficiencies as well. So really, I would see that we currently, within not only this LTP but the financial year we're in, don't have any capacity for any additional resource, and that will be a discussion that will have to come up for the upcoming annual plan, which work will actually start in a couple of months for that too. While I am very supportive of us being mindful of the disability community and continuing the good work that we're doing, I would love to see us looking at ways to ensure that our community, especially our disability community, are aware of that great work that we're already doing, and ensuring that we are continuing to have ways for them to connect in with us in meaningful ways. But I wouldn't see that we currently have any ability for additional resource, if that's the question that you're asking of us today. So that would be my comment now. Understanding that this is the first time we've been presented this information, and we may wish to further reflect on it, but that would be my initial thoughts on this.
Okay, we'll go around the room. So I had Councillor O'Brien followed by Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too would like to voice for option 2. Much and all as I would love to be able to vote for option 3, or at least indicate support, I wonder if that might be a case of running before we learn to walk. We've done we're the first council to bring this policy or bring this issue forward to this state of a policy. I think that's a huge win. I think there's going to be lots of learnings. I myself have learned a lot just with some of the public meetings I have been through. I think one of the main messages that's come out from me is with the disability community accessibility community is one size doesn't fit all. Just saying, oh, we need so many accessible parks on a street is not a policy. We need to think about flexibility. There are so many variations on parking for those with various different needs. That's been a big eye-opener for me. I think the main thing for me would be concern that if we promised the world we're under option 3 but we weren't actually able to deliver, we would just be simply creating a work list that we could never actually address, let alone complete. For me, too, in the financial in the current financial situation we find ourselves in, I think 2 is realistic. I think it gives us an opportunity to get points on the board, but also get action and plans in place so that a future council under another LTP can actually take that work on and advance it forward into actual demonstrative policy. So I support number 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually do have a question. The SME that we're talking about, have we considered, is there a fund or a government agency, the likes that helped us with Raj, now we're getting a play advocate. Is there somewhere that we can get some funding to at least partially cover this so that it's not all on the ratepayer, but that's just a question I'll put out there. But yeah, I would support option 2 as well. I think getting the policy is the first step, because we don't have one. We get the policy, then we can start doing stuff. But we need somebody who's, as you rightly pointed out, we lost a building person who had that expertise. So even if we just refill that role because we have to, that would be great. So I support option 2.
Thanks, Councillor Patterson. Other councillors? Councillor Wari? Hugo said you go.
I'll go. Kia ora. Kia ora te tiamana o tira tātou katoa. Look, I'm going to go for gold here. I'm going to go 3. Why? Because this is like you say, it's the first time this has been put up, and it is an achievement just to get to this far. But, you know, that community, of which I have many whanaunga in, have not received much support over the years. And I think, you know, there's, for me, nothing wrong with trying to explore the option of getting the best we possibly can in that area. It may not be for a forever thing. It might be just until we're established in terms of our policy and how we actually put that forward and implement it. Who knows? But, you know, I'm going to go for gold. And I think, you know, explore those options and show the community, you know, we're trying to do the best. We're looking at it, and they deserve the best. So, you know, it's always those, you go into a lot of places and there's always an issue, you know, toilets, if it's not toilet, it's ramps, if it's that, if they haven't got handrails. Well, these are simple things. I don't think we need to make it that too complicated. And also there are other ones that are not just, it's not just about physical disabilities too. I know of some places that I've been around the country where they consider the type of colours, the lighting, all those things, all those kind of things. I learnt that at St. Chad's too. So that's what I'll go. I'll just say, I'll be straight out. Option 3 would be my, well, yeah, where I would like to see us head for. And, you know, I am a realist. Yeah, it will come down to budget. But, you know, there are some things in our LTP that we thought we weren't going to be able to do. And we've done it. So why not go for the best? All I ask is that, you know, when we do come to actually putting this policy together, and, you know, sometimes it's about, you know, talk to the Rogers, talk to the St. Chad's, make sure that all those people are involved, even if it's just a coffee and a chat, and just making sure, because they do see things differently, because they're constantly having to look for things like that. So, koina noho tāku, kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Waru. Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Chair. I'm on the other end of the spectrum, but I'll hedge my bets either way. I think 1 for now, but I take on board what Councillor Patterson is saying. If we can get funding from somewhere and it's not a straight cost to the ratepayers, I think we can go for gold. So I do like that we're already building back better. I'll remind councillors that we voted down the opportunity to spend some money on some shared paths, and that would have included disability access 4 around the schools and Malfrey Road, and that would have been 60% funded. So if we can't get there by the next LTP, then I think extra funding, then I'll go for option 1.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Brown. I'm going to quickly go around the room, mindful of the time. So Councillor Wing, Councillor Barker, Councillor Lee and Councillor Maxwell.
Okay, to make it quick, I'm in the same camp as Councillor Waru for option 3. I think we've heard a lot from our community, particularly our members of the disabled community, around action around this as well. Knowing the financial environment that we're in, the budget constraints and stuff, but as it's been mentioned before as well, in the LTP there were things that were going to be out that we ended up bringing back in, things that we were in that we ended up taking out. So, you know, there's all these changes there. I just think that this is something that is, you know, it's not only the identity of many in our community, it's their dignity as well. And thank you, I think, to Kellyanne for mentioning the sunflower lanyards as well, because as you said, not every disability is visible. There's many in our community that have disabilities that you don't necessarily see. And so that's equally important as well. And so I think with that, support the message around potentially looking at funding, central government funding for that role. I think there'll be a great opportunity to look at, but support option 3 following Councillor Waru's comments there.
Thank you. Councillor Wing, Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with a lot of the comments that have been made already, and I just wonder if I could hedge my bets a bit too. Maybe option 2, with the question, can that person be dedicated with supportive funding and that kind of thing as well? Kind of option 3, but a level below.
Okay, thanks, and Councillor Barker. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Kellyanne and JP, for your presentation. I had no idea there were that many people in Rotorua, 20,000 odd people with a disability. Goodness gracious, yeah. I'm wondering, I've had the good pleasure of meeting the lady from St. Chad's, and top of her list, as I recall, is something akin to a crossing close to where they operate on Fenton Street. But I'm sort of wondering whether money could be better spent rather than on a SME, subject matter expert, actually doing stuff. So from that point of view, I'm leaning slightly towards option one, but open to any further information that comes along. I do have one leftover question because I had to leave the chamber with a humbug that got out of control. My apologies for that. The Build Back Better policy that you referred to earlier in your presentation, I've typed that into Uncle Google and you say that's a policy that's in place at present? I can see here Rotorua Economic Recovery Plan, Build Back Better from April 2020.
So that's probably my academic background referring to policy as discourse as opposed to policy as formal council policy. So policy, using that term more as it's a practice. Technically, we're guided by a practice and using it in a slightly different way, but it's what we do.
Probably when you're out of the room, I made reference to often when we're upgrading older facilities, standards have changed. So you end up building back at a higher standard because regulations have changed. And certainly when you look at the Building Act, that's absolute.
Right, okay, thank you for
So
that.
policy, not in a formal policy, but policy as a matter of practice. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you. Councillor Mark Maxwell.
Thank you. Straight off, option 3. To me, you would be asking us, when's the best time, or not LTP time? Whenever we'd be discussing this, wouldn't be the right time for many. To me, this is the right time. We need to put a policy there. And I think our own ratepayers would appreciate those who are not disabled or in any way. I think there are funding bodies out there too who, if applications went to them, will readily support things like this, option 3. If any comes to many of the bodies I'm on, I'll act surprised, but I would support it. So whānau, and think about it. Every one of us here, fortunately, we're not in a wheelchair or anything, but we've had family members. I had a brother who lived for 30 years in a wheelchair, but he was fiercely independent. He didn't want to have things done for him. He'd try and do it all himself. So a thing like that, even now, at the moment, I didn't believe over the years, kapahaka now have people in wheelchairs sitting with their group, performing, doing the poise, things like that. But, you know, I appreciate all the comments that have been said, tough times, hard times, but tough times for them are all the time. So, option 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. Just keeping track of this, we seem to have a wide variance in opinions, so I'm just wondering if the best way is that you take on board the feedback that you've received, that you don't have any clear direction on any one of those options. I'm mindful that we still have to go into an annual plan process, and that if I use something that we used to do when we were on the trust, is that we never made the funding decision at the time the presentation was made. We always used to have the opportunity to go back, reflect, think about it, digest, and then come back and make a decision. So I think, can I thank everyone for their participation, and in particular Kellyanne for your presentation today. JP, you've got some comments and direction from everyone, which pretty much covers everything, but I think if you go back to the original premise that you talked about with giving guidance, some clarity on the policies, some good communication, that would be a good start. So thank you very much, everyone.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. Sorry, could I just also, I don't know if it was said before, but pass on an apology for Councillor Kiriopa, who had an emergency phone call.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you for that, and we'll take those apologies. And Councillor Maxwell, closing karakia, please.
Kia whakahiri a te tapu, kia wātea ai te ara, kia tūruki whakataha ai, kia tūruki whakataha ai, haumi e, hui e, tai ki e.
Tēnā koe, Councillor Maxwell. Thank you, everyone.
Kia ora rā.